All right, let's go ahead and get started. Very excited to talk to everyone today about our people-powered research project. We're going to be talking today mostly about broadband, but then about some of the other work that we have been doing at Consumer Reports with all of your work and time. So very excited to jump right in. My name is Alan Smith. I am with Consumer Reports, and I will be kind of taking you through today's call. But there are a bunch of other excellent Consumer Reports people along for the ride with me. So let me see if I can get, first, I'm gonna ask Marcus to come off of mic and on camera and say hi. Marcus, tell us your name, I guess your title at CR, what you do here, and where you are in the country right now.
Hi, Alan and everyone. My name is Marcus Jones. I'm based out of Washington, D.C. I'm a campaign manager on the financial fairness team, and I'm excited to speak to you all today.
Wonderful. And how about you, Tim?
Hey, everybody. I'm Tim Marvin. I am in Northern California, a couple hours outside of San Francisco. I am also a campaign manager, and I'm working on our digital rights work. Did that answer all your questions?
That's perfect. Good to go.
Right.
We have two other Consumer Reports people who will be helping us out today. One of them is Amira, and you're going to see her mostly in the Q&A, but maybe also jumping in the chat a little bit. And last but certainly not least is Erica. And Erica is going to also be helping out with chat, answering questions whenever she can, and keeping us all honest in terms of the time and things along those lines. So welcome, everybody. Glad you are all with us. The vague run of show that we're going to be taking you through today, now that we've heard from who's on the call, we're going to be telling you a little bit more about what we mean when we say people-powered research here at CR. We've worked and will continue to work with folks like you, uncovering all kinds of problems with marketplaces and taking collective actions to try to solve them. We're going to go through some of the things that we have been successful with and give you a sense of what that means. And then we'll tell you about this really exciting new project that we're kicking off in a couple of weeks about broadband and about trying to, let's put it mildly, fix the internet. And then we will talk about kind of how you might fit into that process. We're going to take questions. Actually, there'll be a couple opportunities for you to ask us questions along the way. And then we will try to wrap up and get everybody out of here before 2 p.m. Eastern, so in about 57 minutes. Got a lot to get through, so let's see if we can get it all in. Like I mentioned, this is kind of the, let's call it an initial test run of giving you all the context, the big frame of people-powered research. This is something that Consumer Reports has been doing for a long time. We've tested, asked people to look at their credit reports. We've asked people to test their own water. We've asked you what you think about your different products and how those products might be working with you. So this is something that we have been doing for quite some time, but we're trying to bring it all under the same umbrella and really talk openly about the fact that you and folks like you have really been driving and helping Consumer Reports find problems in the marketplace for a long time. And we really want to, well, thank you for that, but then also let you in a little bit about our processes and how we've been thinking about people-powered research and what that means for us at CR. A couple other pieces of housekeeping. We will be following up with links. We are recording this webinar and we will send around a video of that recording. So don't worry too much if things are going too quickly. You can always come back and look at it again. Also, it's good to note that we are recording, which means that please try to be as responsible as you can, and please forgive us if some of the technological hurdles that come up in the age of Zoom come up for us. You should see closed captioning at the bottom of your screen as an option to turn on if you'd like it. And then, of course, the ways to best engage with us. I see somebody's already jumped into chat, but please feel free to ask questions in chat or even just introduce yourself and tell folks where you're from. If you do use chat, though, we'd prefer that you not just chat just to the panelists. Go ahead and chat to everybody. So not just panelists, but panelists and attendees, so that other folks can see your questions, your comments, your introductions, that sort of stuff. And then there's the Q&A functionality too, which we will be keeping track of and hopefully elevating to the question session when we get to that point. The last little piece of housekeeping, are our ground rules. So a few ground rules for you all. When you're using the chat and asking questions, we ask that you speak from your own experience instead of generalizing. So that means using I or I statements instead of we or you, which in other words is trying not to be too accusatory and respecting that everyone has their own perspective and own way of joining these conversations. Please refrain from any personal attacks to your fellow attendees or to any panelists or people speaking to you today. And please try to focus on the ideas that we're all talking about. Instead of invalidating someone else's story with your own spin, just share your own experience. And our goal is not necessarily to agree on one good ISP or how broadband should work, but it's to gain a deeper understanding together about all the different things we're talking about today. By attending this session, I'm just going to say you are agreeing to these ground rules. And that means if you don't adhere to those rules, we do have permission to take you out of the session. And I hope and trust that's not going to be a problem. So with that, we will move forward. Okay, I've been talking a lot, but I'll get through this little last thing and then I promise you guys will hear from people more interesting. So people-powered research at CR, what that means. We have worked together to talk about to analyze all sorts of different marketplaces, internet privacy, accuracy of credit reporting. We've tested water quality at home faucets, done a whole bunch of things along those lines. One really exciting example that Tim worked on at great length was we collected cable bills looking for hidden fees. Some of you might even have sent us your cable bill a couple of years ago. We published a report on what we found in those cable bills, hidden fees, and legislation was passed as a result of our reporting to help limit hidden fees and overcharging on cable. Now that's a great example of how we hope that the work that you all are doing today, and we're kicking off today on broadband, could lead to a similar pattern of more knowledge, reporting, and then hopefully eventually legislative action. But generally, people-powered research at CR is something that we're going to be investing in more. You're going to be hearing about it more, and we're going to be coming up together with future directions that we want to push. But let's jump into, real quickly, the Let's Broadband Together project. So now I do get to ask Tim to come back and tell us, Tim, real quickly, why is broadband important to us at Consumer Reports?
Yeah, so I think the pandemic has really highlighted, the need for broadband. More than ever, people are going to school over the internet, going to work over the internet, and when you might have only had one or two people on at home during the day, now people have so much more folks on during the day. But the issue is that all broadband isn't created equal. There's differences between rural and urban access. There's differences on access when it comes to racial lines. So one segment of the population doesn't have the same access that others do. And then there's just the fact that broadband isn't terribly transparent. And so are you getting what you paid for? Is the speed that you were promised when you signed up for your internet the speed that's being delivered? And why are we paying so much money for all of it? And so these are all questions that we're working to answer, but we're also working on legislation and reforms to address. And so we're working with a large coalition to change the way that internet works for all.
Beautiful. That's what we call an excellent tease for the last 3/4 of this call. Because before we dive deeper into what we plan to do about broadband and kind of break down some of the different access issues that Tim just raised there, I want to look back in participatory research time. Let's look back at our credit reporting work. So this is something that launched, I guess, in or around January of this year. And we asked many of you to go ahead and take some time to look at your own credit report and report back to us what you saw, what you found. And so now I'm going to tag Marcus back in here and ask you, Marcus, so what was Consumer Reports excited about, and why are we looking at credit reporting when we did what we did?
Yeah, thank you so much for kicking it to me. And also, thanks, Tim, for leading us in with information on broadband. So CR's analysis of Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's complaint database revealed that errors on consumer credit reports skyrocketed due to the pandemic. Not to mention, consumers have a hard time fixing these errors, and a bad credit score can stand between a fair rate for a loan, renting or buying a home, or even landing a new job opportunity.
And so when we were kind of digging into credit reporting, what did we ask people to do? Like, what was the actual ask for folks, and what was sort of unique about the perspective here? What are we trying to uncover?
Yeah, it was super unique because the credit checkup project was voluntary. It wasn't a representative of the country as a whole. Yet 6,000 participants checked their credit reports through our project, and error rates were consistent with the research done by the Federal Trade Commission study in 2012 on the accuracy of credit reports.
So I'm gonna just, maybe some of you have actually already seen the most excellent story that we wrote about this, and Erica is already dropping some information into the chat, which you can follow up on. But here's our first poll of the day, which should be popping up on your screen right now. So of the nearly 6,000 folks who Marcus just mentioned who checked their credit scores, what percentage of folks do you think found major errors? I'm going to give folks a little while longer to see what they think. Don't worry, you will not be penalized by any guesses or any information here. Looks like most folks have gotten a chance to weigh in. So I'm going to close the poll as you all vote, and then I'm going to share back. And it looks like the majority of folks did in fact know the correct answer, but there were a wide range of answers here. So 34% of people found errors in their credit report. Marcus, what does that suggest to you? What does that number mean?
Yeah, 1/3 of participants of this participatory research project found errors on their credit reports. And even in this moment lets me know that the participants of this project may very well be on this call. So I would like to charge and call to those participants to reach out to your friends, your family, your colleagues, anyone else that you feel comfortable having this level of conversation with, to check your credit reports and to see if there are errors, because those errors can have big effects on your financial future. So I'd like to congratulate everyone the 44% of participants on the call that answered correctly.
Yes. So so Marcus, tell me a little bit more about. So you can check and you can find an error, but not all errors are necessarily created equal, right? So what's the most alarming errors, or what are the kind of different issues that we unpacked within the yes/no error question?
Well, honestly, consumers deserve to have a credit report that does not have any errors at all. Some consumers may find errors that are specific to their address, their name, or other factors on their reports, but ultimately it's about the errors that affect your credit score, open and closed accounts, accounts that you have paid off, accounts that do not belong to you at all. Those are the most important errors. But again, we are driving for an error-free credit report here at Consumer Reports. And also we are aiming for persistence. So if you do find an error on your report, write a dispute letter, continue to engage Consumer Reports, view our frequently asked questions page, as well as continue to participate on webinars as such so that you can be informed, and also engage our relevant articles related to credit reporting.
Wonderful. And so with this, can we, like, how difficult have people been finding challenging credit reports or getting into credit reporting, that when they find an error, Is it, you said the word persistence, but how hard are people finding correcting these errors?
No, I appreciate that question because we have to take a step back. And it's not necessarily just about finding the error on your report, but also just being able to access your credit report altogether. A lot of consumers have been having a hard time even getting to the report due to the tricky security questions that arise when you attempt to check your credit report. So that also is a factor that we're exploring as well, in addition to the errors on your credit report, but also the steps it takes to get an accurate credit number and credit report, that those difficulties need to be addressed as well.
All right. And then where are we going, Marcus? What's next with credit reporting?
Yeah, so we're going to continue to pressure the three major credit bureaus, which are Experian, TransUnion, Equifax, to fix errors quickly and make credit reports easily accessible and always free. Of course, at CR, we're going to continue to provide insightful and educational articles for consumers to engage concerning these particular issues that we're fighting for. And we're also pushing for legislative reforms and solutions directed towards credit accessibility, as well as correcting those errors. In fact, today, my colleague, Syed Ijaz, is testifying today, and maybe even as we speak, advocating for legislative reform in front of Congress regarding credit reporting. And we got the invite because of this report. And I like to double down on the fact that it was due to the participation of attendees on these calls, in addition to our continued mobilization and activation of our advocates, that we were allowed this invitation to provide a testimony today. So we would love to keep up the pressure, the hard work. So continue to do this work and continue to engage CR.
Yeah, thank you. That is a really exciting thing, that the work from members starting back in January has already yielded not only this excellent report, but also the ability to go and talk to Congress and get consumer stories directly in front of representatives. It's really very cool. And that is actually sort of why we wanted to start off telling this story, because it does segue. Thank you very much, Marcus. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for that. And we're gonna keep you on for just a second in case people have specific credit report questions. But it is very exciting to think about that direct relationship, and the ways in which our research and our work can be used in congressional testimony, and hopefully to pass or support and pass legislation that protects consumers. So when we talk about broadband, we can talk about that potential and the things that could include as we bring things over. So do we have any questions for Marcus before we get out of here? Has anyone seen? Let's see. So Marcus, can you address the credit company data losses that have resulted in consumer fraud? So there seems to be no accountability that consumers have had to pay for credit freezes, et cetera. Where does that question take you?
That question takes me to a lot of places, but more specifically, it's most important that we continue to pressure the credit bureaus to ensure that credit reports are always accurate, and to ensure that the accuracy of credit reports are a consumer first focus, understanding that when there is fraud, that leads to further financial dangers for consumers. And I greatly appreciate that question, but again, it's about us activating and mobilizing around this issue to ensure that consumers never have to face this problem to begin with.
And then I'm also seeing a question: if your credit report is frozen, and maybe you could also tell people a little bit about whether or not Consumer Reports recommends freezing your credit, or what that even means. But let's assume if your credit report is frozen and there are no errors in it when you froze it, do you need to continue to monitor it until you unfreeze it, or is that, as far as we can tell, safe once it is frozen?
That's a tough question, understanding that each consumer has a unique financial journey or financial history. But one thing I can always advocate is for self-advocacy in all forms. So continue to keep abreast of what's happening with your accounts to ensure that you can catch anything that may happen. Because most importantly, while we can hold these agencies and organizations and businesses accountable, it's first that our individual accountability leads to us making the correct choices for ourselves. So I would say stay abreast on those things. And Consumer Reports is always here.
There you go. And we are always asking people to continue to check their credit report, like Marcus was saying. There will be links in chat. There already have been links in chat, and there will also be links in the email when we send around that email later on in the day, or probably tomorrow, if I'm being totally intellectually honest, that will allow you to not only continue to check your credit report and send information into us, but also, send it to friends and family. This is an important thing, as Marcus was saying, to keep abreast of and to keep front and center in your own journey as a consumer and your own financial journey. I think let's go ahead and that's probably the questions we're gonna be able to get to today. So Marcus, thank you very much again for joining us. If we're very lucky, we might get a call in from Syed, who just is testifying as we speak. Maybe we'll get him to jump in from Capitol Hill on his phone. But until that point, thank you very much, Marcus. And we're going to move on to the broadband piece of today's call.
Take care, everyone.
Appreciate you. So let's broadband together. It's better when you say it out loud. Let's Broadband Together is a new project from Consumer Reports, following on all of this excellent participatory work that we've already been doing. So Consumer Reports, as Tim mentioned, working with a vast coalition of partners, which we'll talk about later, we're launching a broadband affordability initiative, a study across the country to see what to ask consumers to share information with us and see if we can understand more about both quality and cost of internet. So I already saw a question coming in the Q&A from Paul about how much are people in the USA paying for internet at a specific download speed. That is literally exactly the question that we hope to answer over the next couple of months. So we hope that by gathering data points from members across the country and getting everyone to report back exactly what they're paying and what they're getting, and then actually doing a test to see if they're actually getting what they think they're getting. With those three things, we think we can answer some of these questions and give consumers a real top-down view about all of the different ways in which, about what they should expect from the marketplace. And then we'll also be using the information, much like Syed is on Capitol Hill right now, to advocate for better broadband for everybody. That means quality, but that also means accessibility, that means affordability, that means all sorts of things about the broadband world. And before I bring Tim back in here, I'm actually going to take everyone through a quick demonstration, if I'm technologically savvy enough to do this, which is not a guarantee, of the tool that we are launching on July 13th. So let me see if I can share this other screen. And maybe Tim, you can tell me if you see that.
I do see that, Alan. And it looks great.
That's exciting. All right. So this, friends, is the fight for the fair internet. And we are going to ask you to follow along and do a few very easy steps to report how your internet is actually working. Here's how that's going to work. You're going to come to this website. You're going to press start. Once you press start, you will be asked to very quickly test your speed. Now, what does this mean? This means that we basically ping, we're using a third-party speed test, which is a conjunction with a group called MLabs. And this speed test will look for your uploads and download speeds. Now, I'm going to do this now live, but I'm going to say this number is probably not representative of my actual speed. Why is that? Because I'm streaming over Zoom. I'm using some version of my bandwidth to talk to you all. So the numbers that you see sort of fluctuating on my screen right now are a good but not perfect example of what my speed might be, which is good because that's pretty low. It's okay. That's about average. The national median, according to what people expect to be getting, and we haven't done enough research to know how accurate this is, but the national median expectation is 60 megabits per second. I'm getting 14.5 megabits per second. So we're going to ask you to take that speed test. we're going to try to give you a little bit of information about what that speed test means and what those numbers actually are. But really what we want to do is we want to take that speed test and we want to compare it. And we want to compare it to the what your ISP, your internet service provider, tells you that you're supposed to be getting. So what we're going to ask you to do is we're going to ask you to upload a PDF copy of your internet bill. So there are issues where this is a page just telling you what we're going to look for when we upload that bill. We'll get to that in a second on this webinar, but it's hopefully a very seamless, very easy process. You're just going to drag and drop a PDF of your bill here. I have already done this, so I'm actually going to skip this step right now, but it's very simple to just drop a PDF right here and upload it. And then last but certainly not least, we're going to ask you for a few pieces of information about where you are in the country and who you are as a person, because we are hoping to use this demographic information to understand more about what we can say about whether there's internet broadband redlining, whether there's access problems depending on demographic information. So we're hoping to get this information from you all. And that is the entirety of the test. However, we still ask that we're doing a little bit more than just taking the test. We're actually asking that you all help us spread the word, but we can talk about that as we go. So that's the test. Tim, let's start with the kind of that run of show and what we're actually asking for, what we're talking about. We're talking about megabits per second and all that stuff.
Yeah, so we want, we need to get 30,000 bills to kind of understand, where people, to kind of have a good representation. And I think, as Alan pointed out, we're working with a huge coalition of partners to make sure that, where CR, kind of traditionally does well, that we're filling in the gaps demographically, both geographically and demographically, that we're diverse. And so that's kind of the goal of the project, is to get as many bills in as we can from all over the country. So, we're really looking for people to help us power this. Organizations can only do so much, but somebody who lives in rural Nebraska, or if you got a cousin who lives in rural Nebraska, you're going to be the person that helps us make sure that that area is represented. So, I'm from way upstate New York originally, and there's nobody there who's really organizing. So, me emailing my cousins in Attica, New York to be like, hey, I need your broadband bill, it's going to be really helpful to this project. And so I think that's where the people power part is going to come in a really big way.
All right, so before we jump into a little bit more about the landscape of broadband that we're trying to unpack, I have another poll question for you all. So Consumer Reports surveyed people in 2020 about broadband. What percentage of Americans, according to our survey, believe that broadband internet is as important as water or electricity? Do you think it is 44% of those surveyed, 54%, 66%, 76%? And then maybe also, as you're answering this question, maybe you could weigh in on chat. Do you think broadband internet is as important as water or electricity? How does that strike you? Is it what as a question? Thank you all for voting. People are jumping in. I'm actually seeing like really even answers across the board here. No clear winner, which is, I think, very interesting. So I'm going to end this and share it back. The actual answer is the highest one there. 76% of people surveyed said that broadband is as important as electricity and water in the current 2021 climate. But it's interesting that our kind of answers here ran across the board, across the gamut of responses there. But we do think at Consumer Reports that the issues of broadband or the importance of broadband, especially during the pandemic, has gotten to the level that we believe it should be treated as a public utility. If that were to happen, Tim, what would that mean? What is treating internet like a public utility mean to you?
Yeah, so I think Paul might have said something that you don't need broadband to sustain life, and that's true. But I think what we've realized during the pandemic is that we need good broadband access to keep life going. That in order for us to go to work, to pay bills, to make sure our kids can get to school, to have access to kind of the basic things in life now, broadband is an essential utility. And so when we start talking about that, with regulation of utilities comes a higher level of closeness of introspection on these large companies, and the rates that we pay as consumers become regulated. So much like your electric bill, those rates can't vary wildly from based on what street you live, or what color your skin is, or whether you're rural or urban. And that's, I think, the kind of reform we need to see when we talk about broadband as a public utility.
I'm seeing a bunch of very good points in chat, and also a bunch of very good questions, which I think mostly we're going to be able to address as we go. But what are the issues that you think we're going to uncover, Tim? So we talked a little bit about accessibility, about affordability. What are the problems with the marketplace right now?
Yeah, I mean, well, let me back up a little bit. So first,
Sure.
broadband can mean a lot of things. And I think internet access, internet speeds are different to people. So just the term broadband has really become shorthand to mean a fast internet, that meets minimum speed requirements. So that across, again, coming back to the utility issue, even what is broadband is not a standard issue. The FCC now has a standard definition, and that's what we're talking about when we talk about broadband. So the issues that we're starting to see, or that we think will come up even more dramatically as a result of the data that we hope to collect, is that people are charged more based on where they live. So it's not just because you're in a different zip code means you can be charged different things. And we've seen that in industries across time, right? That we've worked on, when it came to real estate, when it came to banking. This is a persistent problem that tends to affect people of color and low-income folks pretty dramatically. Another big thing that I'm sure I think I saw somebody from Texas talking about, is that, depending on where you are, you might have no choice about what internet you're going to get. So for instance, where I live, Comcast is my only choice. So I am stuck with whatever Comcast gives me, which doesn't give me a lot of leverage as a consumer to advocate for better connection, better price, better service. If I don't like it, I can leave, and I'm not faced with many other choices. That problem gets even worse the farther out you get. So I can imagine if you live in rural Texas, you might not even have someone who's willing to service that area because there's not enough customers to make it worth their while. So that's why we need to see expansion of the broadband infrastructure network, which is, again, something that we can point out if we get good data from enough people. And finally, the last point here is you can spend more money for less service thanks to confusing pricing. A lot of people don't even know how. I had to figure out how to find my bill online. Then you get to your bill, and there's a lot of terms that I don't understand, and I work on the issue. What you're exactly paying for isn't always clear. And then how do you measure whether you're getting that actual speed? You can we're going to give you the MLab test, and you can measure your speed, but it's not regulated. You're trusting the company to provide that for you. So it can be really confusing and hard to understand whether you're getting what you pay for. And we're hoping to address all that with the data that folks bring in.
I'm seeing a lot of stories go by in chat about people who are sharing whatever version of frustration that they have with this different thing. I'll just add mine. You guys saw the speed test that I was just running there. It was about 14 to 20 megabits per second. I am in theory paying for a gigabit per second. So that is less than a 40th of what Verizon Fios professes to be giving to me.
Right.
And there are all sorts of ways in which that gets hung up in terms of the fact that I'm currently on this webinar, or maybe it's daytime, maybe there are more people using the internet around me than other times, but that drop off is pretty dramatic. Before we move on, go ahead.
Oh, so I just say Carl just was talking about bundled service, which makes things even more confusing, right? Like,
yeah,
so
sure.
a lot of times you get upsold. Like, I just want internet, but you get upsold to buy a phone, to buy internet, and to buy cable TV, and then you really can't figure out what you're paying for internet. And so the whole and I don't want a phone or cable TV. I just want low cost internet that works. And that's really hard to come by. So I just want to acknowledge Carl's really good point.
Yeah, so a few rapid fire things about this specific test. So the first thing is we're not asking you to do the test right now. We're asking you to do the test tomorrow when I send around the link. That will be because we're going to be getting into this a little bit later in the webinar, but I just want to step on a few things because their questions are coming up now. The link we'll send you tomorrow. We ask that you just test it once, and we realize that that there are wild fluctuations about your speed at different times of day, at different configurations. So we're asking you to basically test on your most standard setup. So whether that is if you have a computer that's plugged in directly to a router versus Wi-Fi, that we're asking you to just go with whatever your standard is, and we will hope that by getting thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of data points, we can sort of smooth out some of the spikes or the curves from outlier pieces of data. And then the last thing I would say is that we do ask that you sort of turn off all the background noise as much as you can. So that means, turn off the streaming Netflix when you test, turn off your VPN, those sorts of things will help us get as close to a good test as possible. But we're really counting on scale and number of tests to help us kind of middle out some of the very real concerns that I'm seeing people ask here about, the making sure we actually understand the actual problem. So appreciate that. You probably have been, if you've read any newspapers recently, you've probably been following the infrastructure bill as it is making its way haltingly through Congress. The infrastructure bill has quite a lot of stuff in it around broadband, which is one of the reasons why Consumer Reports is supporting the broadband portion of some of the different bills that have been floated. So Tim, where are we right now? What's the latest? And do we think, well, I guess what's the latest and what's in the latest? What's actually in there for broadband?
Yeah, so this all started with the Representative Clyburn bill called the American AAIA. Anyway, it got wrapped into the larger infrastructure bill. And, it's been kind of a moving target. It was supposed to be passed really quickly. And then, Congress being Congress, that calendar changed. And then just before they went on recess this week, you probably saw that President Biden came out and announced a deal with Republicans. So, working with John Schwantes, our policy person who's been working on this issue for years on the Hill, his hot take was, any deal that's announced right before recess is going to have a hard time. And, true to form, over the weekend, we saw pot shots being taken at that deal. So this is all to kind of paint the picture that, the things that we're talking about are changing, they're moving quickly, but yet nothing has actually passed. So within the deal, within the broadband issues that we're supporting in infrastructure as part of the larger infrastructure bill, the biggest thing is clarity and disclosures on price, data allowances, and performance. It's called the nutrition label, and this is something that was introduced in 2016 by the FCC, and it's just right in the sweet spot for the things that Consumer Reports likes. It's much like the Schumer box that's in your credit card statement. What it does is it pulls out all the relevant information from your internet bill and puts it in a really easy to read label. So it looks like the nutrition label on the back of food packaging. Erica's going to drop a link into an article that CR wrote that shows a really great example of what the nutrition label looks like. This is something that just is straightforward. It gives you the disclosures in easily understandable format. It really shows you what the price points are, including various charges like coverage, equipment, early termination, admin fees. It also really clearly defines the data that you're using and that you're getting. And finally, the performance that you're paying for, broadband speed and other performance metrics, all in one easy to read box. So that's a really big thing for us. The next is the emergency broadband benefit. This is something that if you've been taking actions with CR, you saw pop up earlier. This is a fund that gives a subsidy to lower income folks, a lot of native and tribal folks. It gives them a subsidy to get broadband to their homes. It's a Band-Aid, it's not a solution to making sure that we have equity and access, but it is something to help folks who are low income get access to broadband so that they can have the economic improvements that come with that they can have access to make sure that their kids are getting to school, so that it provides additional funding to that fund. Broadband transparency, this is kind of like a general term about disclosures, about how your bill is written, about the rates that are being charged across the board. There's a number of steps in the bill, and what the bill does is directs the FCC to adopt rules to collect data from service providers around price and resilience of networks. So the project that we're doing, somebody had a great tag that the project that we're doing should be done by the government, which is 100% true. The fact that Consumer Reports is doing this project is problematic. The government should be going out requiring this data from companies, and they don't. And so that means it's kind of the wild, wild west when it comes to transparency. And so the FCC needs to be given the powers to step up and do more. The part that's kind of tricky right now is the billions to build out infrastructure. So in the original bill, it was $80 billion to create infrastructure through competitive bidding structures. And that would give preference to areas that are most in need. So, Westchester, New York.
That's sort of answering the question. Someone asked in chat, how are you going to get ISP companies to provide service to the boonies where it's not profitable? I mean, the answer to that is a lot of it's government spending, right?
Yep, that's a great question. Right now, there is no way. And so $80 billion in infrastructure spending would create competitive advantages for companies to go and build in those areas. And so that number got dropped down to 60 billion, but then they were finding the other 20 billion someplace else. So that number is still in that. And it would also, that number comes with restrictions on pricing to keep broadband affordable for those communities. So yes, we want you to build broadband out in the boonies, as you pointed out, but what we don't want you to do is then price gouge those low-income communities or those rural communities that couldn't get broadband in the first place. So the money comes with some attachments to keep pricing within reason. And then there's a ton of other things. There's things like Wi-Fi and school busing. It prohibits, this is another great one for folks who are really interested in working on the issue. The law, the last I checked, this is still in the infrastructure bill, but it would prohibit state governments from enforcing laws and inhibit local governments or public-private partnerships or cooperatives to create their own broadband services. So the big example that we always point to is in Chattanooga, Tennessee. That city created their own broadband infrastructure, which is genius. And you can work on your city to do the same thing, or you can create a co-op with your friends and neighbors. But there's 17 states right now that have laws on the books that outlaw that, which is insane, I know. But this would preempt those state laws. So that's another big one for us. And
so just to sum that last thing up,
but that's the kind of nuts and bolts.
Yeah, the last thing there is, so there are some states with laws that make it impossible, and this bill, if passed, would obviate those laws. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, cool. So I do want to get to 1,000 great questions that I'm seeing piling up in chat and maybe also in the Q&A section here. But I want to give you a few more pieces of information. So our official launch is July 13th. So we're going to send you this link tomorrow. And that link will be our very first time that the wide world of Consumer Reports members will be seeing this. So you guys are part of a hopefully a very special crew. I actually saw one person in the chat mention that you think you did this test back in November 2020. Bless you. You are fantastic if that is you.
That's awesome.
Because that means you were part of our very early pilot, which led us to building the thing that we are going to be sending you tomorrow. So thank you very much for testing us with us back in the day. Thank you for sending us your bill. We used your bill actually as part of building out a special, unique piece of technology, in fact, which is something, we built something that can automatically extract data values relevant to pricing from PDFs. So to a couple of questions that I'm seeing about, like, how will we know about bundling? How will we know about all these different things? We've got a tool that we think can read your PDF without pulling out your name, without pulling out what movies you ordered last month, without pulling out any personal information at all, and just extract the information about the price and the whether or not you're part of a bundle. If we're unable to automatically extract the value, if your PDF is laid out in such a strange way that it tricks our system, we will have a human reviewer working for Consumer Reports going through and manually extracting values from your bill. We're going to try to automatically obfuscate your name and an address and anything like that before humans look at your bill. But there might be moments when a person with the PII blacked out does get a chance to go in and look. So the test that we will be sending you tomorrow, or the link we'll be sending you tomorrow, is live. It's the actual thing, but you're the first people to get it, which means that we're hoping that you will go through it. And then if you find any bugs, because Lord knows we hope there are none, but there probably still are a few, you can go ahead and let us know before our July 13th date, so we can get them fixed. I'm also seeing questions about, can we redact the bill? Absolutely. If you feel more comfortable going in and doing that yourself beforehand, taking out any information that you would like, either by editing your PDF, if you feel both technologically capable of doing that and also have the desire, please feel free. It'll just hopefully be duplicating the redaction that our system is going to be doing. And then we're going to be launching with you all tomorrow, but then there are a bunch of cool people who are coming in to help out, right, Tim?
Yeah, so this is the part I'm really excited about. Consumer Reports is a pretty trusted brand across the country, but the fact is that we're still working on making sure that we talk to all the different segments that need to be represented in programs like this. And so working with the American Library Association, MLab, who's helping us do the testing, Rural Assembly, which works on access in far-flung areas, National Digital Inclusion Alliance, which also works on access for low income and people of color, Color and Change. So just so many great groups. We're almost to 40 groups now that have signed on to help with the project, which allows us to hit big urban areas, but also smaller rural areas. We've also been really focused on the fact that CR doesn't always talk to people of color and different demographics. So we've been really focused on bringing in partners that speak specifically and advocate specifically for those communities. And so we're really excited about that work. If we combine that with your people power, we think this is going to be a really successful project.
And as Tim is alluding to, we really want to cover like the entire map, right? We want to get people to submit bills from everywhere. So we're hoping that once you take the test yourself and once it's all working, once we hit that July 13th date, yeah, send it to your cousin in Nebraska, man. Send it to the person across the street. Send it to people who are one zip code over, because the more data we get there, the more we'll be able to come back and answer Paul's question that kind of kicked us off about an hour ago about, am I paying the right amount? Is this what I should be expecting for my internet? And is this what I should be actually getting for my internet? For what I pay, and that only comes with lots and lots of people giving us their information. So real quickly, what we are looking for, and then a little bit more about what we're not looking for. So we're looking for access and choice. So basically, we're going to collect based on different zip codes, all the different kinds of bills that are in that zip code, and we're going to be able to tell, therefore, a little bit more about are there good options available within different parts of the country, or is there really only one option, or are there no options that make it to the level of broadband, depending on where you are? Saw some people claiming the boonies. I grew up in the boonies. We didn't even have TV where I grew up, so I feel y'all's pain. But the access is one point, getting able to plug in is one point, but then having options is another one, and having options that don't break the bank is another one. We're going to be looking at confusing pricing. So we're going to be looking at the ways in which I see a lot of anger in the chat and in questions about bundling, totally justified. It's very hard to figure out, sometimes what you're paying, and then if you could be paying just for internet, as Tim mentioned. So we're going to be looking at different ways that people do pricing, look at the way they hide pricing in different language and what they put it in your bill. And then, of course, we're going to be looking for the tried and true hidden fees, all the ways in which they add a, you have to use their technology, so you have to rent their router, and that router means another $15 a month, which is just add on to the cost of your bill. It's a series of ways of driving up what they originally marketed your price to be. I mentioned, and I think this is a thing to underline here one more time, we do ask demographic information, and some people have wanted to know why we're asking that. Why does it matter the color of my skin for broadband? Why does it matter about my education level or how much money I make? Those are all important because we think that broadband is being targeted based on those issues. We do think that there's probably redlining happening, redlining being the term for companies intentionally drawing red lines on a map and not servicing as well areas where people of color might live. We do think that there is probably more accessibility and more choice in places of high income. So those kinds of questions, we're going to see whether or not our data bears out with this test, and see what we can then do about it. If in fact there's going to be billions of dollars of infrastructure money being used to wire the country, that wiring should happen in such a way as to ameliorate some of those discrepancies. And then, so we do think that those demographic information things are very important. I tried to take questions as we went through here. I tried to grab them as we go. One question I did see here about what information we're actually collecting. So we're taking the cost of the what you're paying, and we're taking your zip code, which means we're not collecting names, we're not collecting addresses, we're not collecting your billing discrepancies, we're not collecting if you're behind on your bill, anything like that. So we are just grabbing cost information out of that bill and hoping that the combination of your bill and the speed test layered on top of it give us an accurate map of what's happening in this country. Let's see here. Are there any other great questions anyone wants to throw in front of me? I think I saw a question about router. So let me take one quick moment to address, like, we talk about broadband. There are a bunch of steps between the internet that is coming in-house and your actual computer and the speed at which your computer is accessing the web. And that might include your router, your Wi-Fi system, the fact that you've chosen to put your Wi-Fi inside of a lead refrigerator and close the door. You probably shouldn't do that. Anyway, all of those sorts of things are very real, and they will probably change your ability to get good internet. So one of the things that we're going to be offering as a part of all of this is a lot of information and suggestions about how to improve the stuff that you actually can control. You can't always control your bandwidth. You can't always control the amount of speed that is coming into your home, but you can do some things to tweak from within your house. And so we're going to be giving some recommendations to anyone who takes this test about how to kind of tweak and improve the stuff you can get. Someone says, if I'm out of town staying in hotels on 7/13 and for several days after, do you still want my speed test from those sites? That's interesting. I think probably not, because we don't have a way to add those speed tests to a bill. So I think that we're going to be collecting data for the next couple of months. So the best thing to do would be to get back to a place where you could pair your speed test with what you are yourself paying for home internet. And if that is, that there should be plenty of time between now and mid-September when we hope to be finished collecting for that to happen. Let me see. Someone says, my bill is 4 pages long. Do you need all of the bill or just my first page with month's charge? Go ahead and send us the entire bill. Again, we're going to have tools that go in and pick out what we think is the most important. And people put information on different parts of that bill. So we can't even necessarily know for sure where that might happen. Great suggestions from Scott here about improve your router, your Wi-Fi. Good suggestions in the chat for people to get to some of the things I was just mentioning here about how to maximize your own world.
And Alan, I don't know if we have that, but we can drop in the article that Jim Wilcox wrote. He's written a couple about how to.
Boom.
There it is.
Some coming in now.
So on top of it. Amazing. And then I just wanted to, I've been reading through the chat comments, and there's just so much collective anger at the ISPs. It feels so much like working on the cable issue where, people, honestly, I didn't think we were going to get that many bills. I expected 100. We got 5,000 in like a month. And so, I think you're right to be angry at the ISPs. You're right to be angry that your state government hasn't done more. But I think what this project does is gives people an actual place to channel that anger and do some good. And so if after you do the test this week, I hope you'll get involved and take our actions, but also be sure to let your neighbors know about this project as well. The more people that we have filling this out, the better. And so if your angries are pissed off at Comcast, be sure to reach out to them.
Yeah. I think a couple of things here, just to reiterate, we're going to get started with your own speed test and bill when we send this to you tomorrow in the follow-up email. I want to just sort of mark the fact that we were going to be having a call just like this in the fall to tell you about what we found and to report back and hopefully be able to answer more specifically some of your questions in comparison to what you paying for, what you're getting, and whether that, how does that, match up with different things. I'm also seeing one more question: test with cell phone, iPad, TV, and computer. I think it would be best, Milton, if we just test with the device that you consider your most standard. And I know that might be hard to parse, but we really kind of want to just do one speed test per bill as much as possible. So it could be 2 speed tests per bill, but generally go to the device that you think of the most often when you think about connecting to the internet. And then, of course, you can always reply to us at community@cr.consumer.org with other questions we didn't get to. I want to thank Marcus and I want to thank Tim for joining us.